What happened when your new neighbor wasn't who they claimed? I never thought moving into a quiet suburban street could ruin my life. But the day our new neighbor arrived, everything I believed about safety, family, and trust started to collapse. It was early spring when the moving truck pulled up. A pale blue house across from ours, vacant for months, suddenly had life again. I stood at my kitchen window, coffee in hand, watching a man step out of the cab. Tall, dark hair cropped neatly, sunglasses even though clouds stretched thick across the sky. He glanced around like he was scanning, not admiring. That detail stayed with me. Finally, someone bought it. My wife, Claire, said behind me, her voice carrying cautious optimism. Our neighborhood had been quiet for years, almost too quiet, and she was desperate for new company. You should go say hello. I didn't. Not that day. Something about him made me hold back. The next morning, though, he came to us. I was tightening a loose gutter when I heard his voice. Need a hand? Deep, smooth, the kind of voice that made you want to believe him. I turned to see him standing at the fence with a welcoming smile. He introduced himself as David, said he worked in logistics. No company name, no details. Just logistics. Claire baked a pie that afternoon and insisted we bring it over. Inside his house, the smell of fresh paint stung my nose. Cardboard boxes stacked with military precision, not one out of place. He accepted the pie with thanks, but his eyes didn't linger on Claire or me. They drifted to our son Jacob, who stood awkwardly in the doorway. How old are you? He asked, voice too sharp for casual interest. Jacob muttered, 12, and shifted behind me. I should have noticed more, but I told myself new neighbors are always awkward. Over the next weeks, David blended into the street. He waved at passing cars, made small talk at mailboxes, even mowed an elderly neighbor's lawn without being asked. People loved him quickly, too quickly. I watched from my porch as Mrs. Callahan handed him cookies, laughing like he was an old friend. But when no one else was looking, his eyes hardened. Once, I caught him staring at our house, long after the conversation ended. Not at me, not at Claire, at Jacob's window upstairs. Claire thought I was imagining things. You're overprotective, she said one night as we folded laundry. He's just lonely. But loneliness doesn't explain the night I woke to footsteps outside at 2 a.m. I crept to the window and saw David standing at the edge of our driveway. No phone, no dog, no cigarette. Just standing, looking at our house. When my shadow shifted across the blinds, he turned slowly and walked back across the street, calm as ever. The next day, he waved at me like nothing had happened. I tried to let it go, but then Jacob came to me after school, pale and quiet. Dad, he whispered. Mr. David asked me if I wanted to see his basement. He said he has video games down there. My chest tightened. And what did you say? I told him no, but he kept asking. He said you wouldn't mind. Rage surged in me, but fear was louder. I told Claire. She froze, pie plate still in her hand, her face draining of color. Maybe he just meant it friendly. No, I cut her off. That's not friendly. I confronted him that evening, walked across the street, fists balled, ready to fight if I had to. He answered the door with that same practiced smile. Everything all right, neighbor? Stay away from my son, I said through clenched teeth. His smile didn't falter. If anything, it widened. Of course. Misunderstanding. Kids exaggerate. He leaned against the doorframe, calm, relaxed. But if you want to talk about boundaries, maybe you shouldn't be snooping at your window at 2 in the morning. My blood ran cold. He knew. He'd seen me watching. That night, Claire begged me not to make a scene. We don't know anything yet, she said. But I did. I knew enough. And then came the package. 2 weeks later, a plain brown envelope slid under our door. No return address. Inside photos. Blurry. Taken at night. Jacob through his bedroom window, asleep. One photo showed me and Claire arguing in the kitchen. Another showed Claire alone in the garden, bending over the flowers. All from across the street. All from his angle. I wanted to storm over, to break his door down. But Jacob was upstairs. Claire was crying, and I realized we weren't safe anymore. And David knew it. When I looked out the window, his porch light was on. He was sitting there calmly in a chair, sipping tea, staring straight back at me. I didn't blink. Neither did he. That was the night I realized. Our new neighbor wasn't who he claimed. And whatever game he was playing, it had just begun. The next morning, I didn't want Jacob walking to school. I drove him myself, watching the rearview mirror every few seconds, half expecting David's black SUV to appear behind us. It didn't, but my gut wouldn't settle. When I got home, Claire was on the phone with her sister, her voice shaky. No, it's fine, she kept saying. Just, Jakey had a nightmare, that's all. She caught my eye and shook her head slightly, signaling me not to say anything. She didn't want her family to know. That's when I realized Claire wasn't ready to face this. She still wanted to believe in neighborly goodwill. I couldn't blame her. It was easier than facing the possibility that danger had moved in across the street. But then I saw the envelope on our porch. Another one. This time, the photos were closer. Jacob playing basketball in the driveway, Claire unloading groceries, and one of me standing in our bathroom shaving, lines half open. He was everywhere. He had been inside our lives in ways we never noticed. I wanted to call the police, but what could I say? My neighbor gave me creepy photos. They'd laugh it off as paranoia. Worse, they'd confront him directly. Then what? He'd just hide better. That night, I sat awake in the dark living room with a baseball bat across my lap. At 1:17 a.m., headlights swept across the walls. I jumped up, heart pounding, only to see David CV pulling slowly into his driveway. He got out, carrying nothing, whistling softly like he'd just returned from an evening stroll. And then he looked at me through the glass. My silhouette was clear against the dim glow of the lamp. He knew I was watching again. He lifted his hand in a small, mocking wave before disappearing inside. By the third envelope, Claire couldn't deny it anymore. The pictures showed Jacob at school, in the cafeteria, walking with his friends. How? David didn't have a kid. He wasn't supposed to even be on school grounds. Claire's hands trembled as she held the photos. This isn't normal. This isn't just weird. It's stalking, I said flatly. We went to the police then. Officer Daniels, young and overly polite, took our statement. He asked if we had proof David delivered the envelopes. We didn't. He asked if David had threatened us directly. He hadn't. Daniels sighed, typed a few notes, and promised to swing by the neighborhood. That was it. We left the station defeated. But when we returned home, something was wrong. The back door was unlocked. I always locked it. Always. I moved through the house slowly, bat in hand, every nerve screaming. Claire clutched Jacob upstairs, whispering to him to stay quiet. Room by room I searched, until I reached the basement. That's where I found it. On the workbench sat a single Polaroid. Not in an envelope, just waiting. It showed the three of us, me, Claire, and Jacob eating dinner at our own table 2 nights ago. Taken through the window, perfectly framed. I didn't sleep that night. Neither did Claire. The following morning, David waved at me from his porch again, cheerful as always, as though nothing had happened. And then he called out, "Hey, you guys should come over for dinner sometime. I make a mean pot roast." The audacity of it nearly broke me. But later that day, Jacob came home pale and shaking. "Dad, he was at my school again. He told me. He told me he knows what time I go to bed." I grabbed my keys and stormed across the street. Claire screamed my name, but I didn't care. I pounded on his door until my fist ached. He opened it calmly, like he'd been expecting me. "You've crossed a line," I spat. "Stay away from my family. Or what?" His voice was soft, amused. "You think the police will believe you? You think anyone will?" He leaned closer, his smile widening. "Families disappear all the time. Accidents happen." I saw red. My fist shot forward, connecting with his jaw. He stumbled back but kept smiling through the blood on his lip. "Now who looks dangerous?" he whispered. And that's when I realized he wanted this. He wanted me to snap, to look unstable. I backed away slowly, chest heaving, as he stood in his doorway grinning like a man who'd just won. That night, another envelope appeared. Inside was a single note. "Tick-tock, your son looks just like you." My hand shook so hard I nearly dropped it. Claire read it and sobbed. Jacob just stared at us, wide-eyed, and whispered the question I'd been dreading. "Dad, is he going to take me?" And for the first time, I didn't know how to answer. I didn't go to work the next day. I couldn't. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at that note until the letters blurred. Claire paced the floor like a trapped animal, her hands twisting the fabric of her robe. Jacob wouldn't come downstairs. He stayed in his room with the door locked, the first time he'd ever done that. By noon, I made a decision. If the police wouldn't stop David, I would. I marched across the street, ready to break into his house if I had to. But when I got there, the blinds were drawn. The SUV wasn't in the driveway. Silence pressed down on me. My fists clenched as I pictured him in some alley, camera pointed at Jacob through a chain-link fence. But then I noticed something odd. On his porch sat a package. Not for him, for us. Our name, our address, delivered to the wrong house. I picked it up, but before I could turn away, the door creaked open. David stood there, barefoot, hair mussed like he'd been sleeping. "Package mix-up," I said curtly. He leaned against the frame, smirking. Funny how things always find their way to me. I shoved the box at him. "Stay the hell away from my family." "Or?" he asked again, the same mocking tone, like a cat toying with a cornered mouse. This time, I didn't answer. I just walked away. But the back of my neck prickled the whole time, like his eyes were drilling holes through me. That night, Jacob screamed. I bolted upstairs to find him trembling in his bed, pointing to the window. He was there, right there. He tapped on the glass. I rushed outside, flashlight cutting across the yard. Nothing. No footprints in the grass. No sound. Just the heavy silence of a neighborhood pretending to sleep. But Jacob's terror was real. He wouldn't calm down until I dragged a chair into his room and sat by his bed with the bat in my lap. Claire curled up next to him, tears streaking her face. We lasted like that for 3 nights. 3 nights of shadows moving where they shouldn't, of faint sounds outside that could have been branches or footsteps. 3 nights of waiting for the next envelope. And then it came. Not at the door this time. On Jacob's pillow. A Polaroid of him, taken while he slept. I nearly collapsed. Claire vomited in the bathroom. Jacob sobbed, begging me not to send him to school. I knew then David had been inside our house. I stormed to his front door, but the SUV was gone again. The house looked empty, Curtains drawn. No movement. He was always one step ahead. That evening, I called Officer Daniels again, voice shaking with fury. He's breaking into our house. He left a picture on my son's pillow. Daniels sighed, like I was a nuisance. Do you have the photo? Fingerprints? Signs of forced entry? The lock was untouched. He had a key. Or something. Then technically, sir, we don't have evidence. I slammed the phone down so hard Jacob jumped. My rage felt like fire under my skin. Claire whispered what neither of us wanted to say. What if he doesn't stop until he takes Jacob? That night, I made another decision. I stayed up with the lights off, crouched by the window, gun in hand. I hadn't told Claire I'd bought one 2 days ago. Cash, no paper trail. If he came, I'd be ready. And just past 3 a.m., I saw movement. A figure creeping across our lawn, low and careful. He wore dark clothes, a hood. But even in the faint light, I knew it was him. My breath hitched. My finger hovered over the trigger. He reached the base of Jacob's window. He looked up, smiled, raised his hand and tapped the glass. Jacob screamed. I flung open the front door, gun aimed, heart hammering. Get away from my house! I roared. But David didn't run. He just stood there, hands raised slightly, that same maddening smile on his face. The porch lights flicked on around the street. Neighbors peeked through curtains, phones lighting up. David stepped back slowly, voice calm and loud enough for everyone to hear. I was just checking on Jacob. He seemed upset. Your husband's losing it, Claire. Then he turned and walked back to his house like nothing had happened. Police cars arrived minutes later, because of me. Because the neighbors called about the man waving a gun in the street. And while Daniels took my weapon and lectured me about appropriate responses, David stood on his porch, bathrobe tied neatly, sipping tea, shaking his head like he pitied me. I realized then, he wasn't just watching us. He was destroying us, one piece at a time. After the police left that night, the house felt poisoned. Jacob wouldn't go back upstairs. He curled up on the couch between Claire and me, wide-eyed, refusing to close his eyes. Claire held him tight, but her face was blank, like she was already somewhere else, trying not to collapse. I barely slept, half expecting another tap at the window. By morning, news had traveled. Mrs. Callahan from 2 houses down caught me by the mailbox, voice dripping with forced sympathy. He says you pulled a gun on him, she whispered. Said you've been under stress at work. We're all a little worried about you. I wanted to scream. Instead, I muttered something about a misunderstanding and walked away. But the looks from other neighbors burned into my back. He was turning them against me, one by one. That evening, I checked our locks 3 times, then again before bed. Still, at 2 a.m., I heard the creak of a floorboard that wasn't ours. I grabbed the bat and crept downstairs, every muscle tight. The kitchen window was cracked open. On the counter sat another Polaroid. This one wasn't of Jacob. It was of me, asleep, my mouth slightly open, the blanket tangled around my legs. Taken from inside the room. I dropped it like it burned. Claire came running, saw it, and nearly collapsed. We have to leave, she whispered. We can't stay here. He'll kill us. But where would we go? He'd follow. He knew everything already, our schedules, our family, even our arguments. Running felt pointless. The next day, Jacob refused to eat breakfast. He sat at the table with his arms wrapped around himself, eyes fixed on the wall. He told me something, he said finally. Claire froze. What do you mean? He told me, if I don't come with him, he'll hurt you. Both of you. I gripped the table so hard my knuckles whitened. When did he say that? Yesterday. At school. He was waiting by the fence. No one saw. I wanted to break every bone in David's body, but rage wouldn't save us. That night, I set up cameras around the house, cheap ones I bought that morning. Motion sensors too. If he stepped foot on our lawn, I'd have proof. Finally, something to shove in the police's face. But when I checked the footage the next day, I froze. The cameras were dead, all of them, wires cut clean. And taped to one of the lenses was another photo of our family eating dinner, taken from outside the window, the night before. He wasn't just in our house. He was inside our defenses, stripping away every illusion of safety. Claire started breaking down. She barely spoke, barely ate, just clutched Jacob like she could hold him safe with her arms alone. I tried to keep strong, but inside I was unraveling. Then came the invitation, slipped under our door in the middle of the night, written in neat block letters. Come to dinner, no more secrets. Tonight at 7, D. Claire shredded it immediately, but I kept the pieces. Proof, evidence, something real to hand over. But when I called Officer Daniels again, he brushed me off. Look, sir, you're escalating this. Maybe you should take a break. Go somewhere else for a while. Sometimes these conflicts burn out if you don't feed them. Feed them? This wasn't a stray dog. This was a man breaking into my house, stalking my son, turning my neighborhood against me. That evening, I sat on the porch, bat across my knees, waiting. Across the street, David's porch light flicked on. He stepped out, dressed neatly, holding 2 glasses of wine. He raised one toward me in a silent toast. Then he called out calm, smooth, every word meant for the neighbors listening behind their blinds. You're welcome any time, friend. We should talk things over. Man to man. Claire gripped my shoulder, whispering, Don't. That's what he wants. that Jacob was shaking so hard behind her I thought he might break. And for the first time, I realized, if I didn't end this soon, David would. The question was, how far was I willing to go to protect my family? I didn't go to David's dinner. Of course I didn't, but part of me thought about it. About walking through his door, sitting at his table, and pretending until I could figure out what he really wanted. Instead, I stayed awake in the dark, listening, waiting. At 2:37 a.m., the sound came slow, deliberate tapping. Not at Jacob's window this time. At ours. I bolted upright, heart in my throat. Claire clutched my arm, eyes wide, silently begging me not to move. The tapping stopped, and a soft scraping began, like fingernails across glass. I crept to the window and yanked the curtains open. No one. But taped to the outside of the glass was another Polaroid. This one showed the three of us sleeping in our bed, taken from inside the room. Claire screamed. I ripped the photo down and tore outside in nothing but my boxers, bat raised, ready to kill him with my bare hands. The street was empty, too empty. Porch lights flicked on one by one as neighbors peeked out, watching me spin in the middle of the road like a madman. And then I heard it laughter. Low, steady, from the shadows near his house. David stepped forward slowly, hands in his pockets, smirk wide. "Careful, neighbor," he said softly, but loud enough to carry. "You're starting to scare people." I charged at him, but he didn't flinch, didn't move, just stood there, calm as ever, until Claire's voice stopped me. "Please," she begged from our porch. "Don't give him what he wants." Her words cut through the haze of rage. I stopped inches from him, chest heaving. David leaned in, his breath hot against my ear. "Tick-tock," he whispered. "Kids don't stay kids forever." I nearly swung then, nearly crushed his skull. But I didn't. I couldn't. He turned and strolled back to his house, whistling, like the whole street wasn't holding its breath. Inside, Claire collapsed against me, sobbing. "We can't stay here. He'll kill us." But the thought of running felt like losing. The next day, Jacob refused to leave his room. He sat on his bed clutching a baseball glove, like he thought it might protect him. "Dad," he whispered, "what if he comes when I'm at school? What if he takes me then?" I couldn't promise him safety anymore. My throat closed around the words. That evening, another envelope appeared. This one wasn't photos. It was a USB drive. Against Claire's protests, I plugged it into my laptop. A single video file popped up. I clicked. The footage was grainy, black and white. Our living room, taken from a high corner like a camera had been planted in our house. The video showed us eating dinner 3 nights ago, laughing weakly, trying to be normal for Jacob. And then it showed us sleeping. All of us. I ripped the laptop shut, bile rising in my throat. "He's in the walls," I muttered. "He's inside the house." Claire looked like she might faint. "We're calling the police again. I don't care if they believe us. We're leaving tonight." But when I grabbed my keys, they weren't on the hook. The car, parked in the driveway, was gone. David had taken it. Jacob sobbed into Claire's chest while I stood there shaking. The realization hitting me like ice water. We weren't just being watched anymore. We were trapped, and he had all the power. I called the police the second I realized the car was gone. My voice cracked as I explained, but Danielle's just sighed through the phone. "Sir, are you sure it wasn't stolen by someone else? We'll put out a report, but without evidence." "It was him," I shouted. "It's always him." By the time an officer showed up, the car was back, parked neatly in the driveway. No damage, nothing missing. Just sitting there like it had never left. And tucked under the windshield wiper was another Polaroid. Me, on the phone, shouting into the receiver. Claire pulled Jacob inside and locked every bolt. I stood in the driveway shaking so badly I thought my knees would give out. When the officer arrived, I shoved the photo at him, but he only frowned. "Doesn't prove he took the car," he said. "Could be an old picture. Could even be a prank." A prank. That word burned through me. When the cruiser pulled away, David strolled out of his house like nothing had happened. He was wearing running shorts, earbuds dangling, a sheen of sweat on his forehead. "Evening, neighbor," he called, cheerful as ever. "Everything all right?" I wanted to tear his throat out. Instead, I slammed our door and locked it. That night, Claire sat on the edge of the bed whispering prayers she hadn't said since she was a child. Jacob slept between us, small body twitching with nightmares. I held the gun on my lap, waiting for the sound of another window, another tap. But the night stayed silent. The next morning, our world cracked open. Jacob was gone. I tore through the house screaming his name. His shoes were by the door, his backpack still on the hook. Claire's shrieks echoed through every room. The only sign was the back door, slightly ajar. On the kitchen counter sat a note. He wanted to see the basement after all. "Don't worry, I'll take good care of him. D." Claire collapsed to the floor, clutching the paper like it was a death sentence. I grabbed the bat and sprinted across the street, pounding on David's door until my fists bled. No answer. I kicked it in. The house smelled faintly of bleach. Too clean. Every surface gleamed. Boxes still stacked neatly, untouched like no one really lived there. I tore through each room, screaming Jacob's name. But there was nothing. No bed, no clothes, just emptiness. And then I found the basement door. It was locked. I hurled myself against it until the frame splintered. The stairs groaned as I stumbled down, my breath ragged, sweat blinding my eyes. But the basement was bare, concrete floor, empty shelves, nothing but a single chair in the center, and on it another Polaroid. Jacob, blindfolded, duct tape across his mouth. Claire's scream from upstairs nearly split me in half. She'd followed me in. She was clutching the photo, sobbing, when headlights swept across the window. A black SUV purred into the driveway. David stepped out, calm as ever, straightening his shirt like he'd just come home from errands. And in his hand dangled Jacob's baseball glove. I didn't think, I just charged. My vision tunneled until there was nothing but David standing smugly in the driveway, holding that glove like a trophy. Where is he? I screamed, bat raised. He smiled. Relax, neighbor. He's safe for now. I swung. He stepped back easily, like he'd expected it, and the bat slammed into the SUV's hood with a sickening clang. Neighbor's lights flicked on, blinds cracked open. That was what he wanted, an audience. Claire ran out, sobbing, clutching the Polaroid. Please, just tell us where he is. David tilted his head, studying her like she was a bug under glass. Funny thing about children, he said softly. They'll go with anyone if you promise them enough. I lunged again, but he dropped the glove and slipped back toward his porch. Calm, unhurried. I'd be careful, he called, his voice carrying in the cool night air. If you keep looking this unstable, maybe the authorities will start asking if Jacob's safer with me. The words froze me. He wasn't just threatening us, he was planting the seed, twisting the story, making himself the savior. By the time I scrambled up the porch steps, his door slammed shut. Locks clicked. Silence. Claire collapsed to the ground, clutching the glove. I pulled her into my arms, but her sobs tore through me like blades. Our son was gone, and our enemy was right in front of us, untouchable. The police came again. This time, they treated me like the criminal. Officer Daniels pulled me aside, voice sharp. Neighbors report you've been threatening him, breaking into his house. Now your kid's missing and you're saying it's his fault. You need to calm down before this gets worse. Check his basement, I roared. He took my son. He's playing with us. Daniel's eyes narrowed. We did. It's empty. Spotless. Maybe you should start thinking about who else might have taken Jacob. I wanted to hit him. Instead, I shoved the Polaroid into his hand. Explain this. He glanced at it, unimpressed. Could be staged. Kids play around. Duct tape on his mouth is not playing around. I screamed, but Daniels just shook his head. You're too close to this. Maybe sit down, get some rest. We'll put out an alert. That's when it hit me. David had won again. He'd made me look like the madman while Jacob slipped further away. That night, Claire and I sat in the living room, clutching the gun and the bat like lifelines, staring at the door. Neither of us spoke. We didn't know if Jacob was 2 streets over, or 2 states away. All we had was silence. Until a buzz broke it. My phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. A video file. I opened it with shaking hands. The screen showed Jacob tied to the chair in David's basement, blindfold still on, duct tape across his mouth. His small body trembled as he struggled against the ropes. And behind him, David's voice purred. Family dinner, tomorrow night, 7 sharp, or you'll never see him again. Claire covered her mouth to muffle her scream. My hand shook so violently I nearly dropped the phone. The video ended. The screen went black, and I realized tomorrow would decide everything. The night before his so-called family dinner, we didn't sleep. Claire paced the living room like a caged animal, muttering prayers and curses under her breath. I sat frozen in the armchair, the gun heavy in my lap, staring at the phone that had delivered our nightmare. Every tick of the clock was a countdown. At dawn, Claire grabbed my arm. We call the FBI, the state police. Someone has to listen. I shook my head. By the time they act, Jacob will be gone. He wants us there. No one else. Her face twisted with terror. So what? We walk into his trap. Better than doing nothing. All day, we prepared. I checked the gun 3 times. Loaded and unloaded until my fingers blistered. Claire packed a bag rope, duct tape, first aid kit, flashlight. Not because she thought we'd need them, because she wanted to feel like we had a chance. At 6:30 sharp, we crossed the street. The sun was setting, the sky bleeding orange into black. David's porch light glowed like a beacon. When he opened the door, he was dressed in a crisp button-down, sleeves rolled neatly. A table was set behind him, candles flickering, plates gleaming. Right on time, he said, smiling as if we were guests and not prisoners. Come in. Claire clutched my arm so tight her nails dug into my skin. I kept the gun hidden under my jacket, every muscle ready to snap. The house smelled of roasted meat and wine. But beneath it, faintly, I caught another scent. Leech. Where's Jacob? I demanded. David gestured to the table. He'll join us shortly. Let's eat first. A family should always eat together. Claire's breath hitched, but I pushed forward. We're not touching a damn thing until we see him. His smile didn't falter, but his eyes hardened. So impatient. Fine. He snapped his fingers. From the hallway came the sound of dragging footsteps. My heart seized then. Jacob appeared. He was alive. His wrists still bound, duct tape across his mouth, blindfold hanging around his neck. His face pale, streaked with tears, but breathing. Claire lunged forward, but David yanked Jacob back by the shoulder. Not yet. He sits with me tonight. The rage that flooded me was blinding. I raised the gun, aiming square at his chest. Neighbors would hear. Police would come. But none of that mattered. Let him go, I growled. David tilted his head, calm as ever. Shoot me, and you'll never know what I've already set in motion. My finger trembled on the trigger. What are you talking about? He smirked. You think this is just about your family? You think you were chosen at random? Confusion stabbed through my fury. What do you mean? David leaned closer, whispering like he was sharing a secret. Your wife knows. Claire stiffened. Her grip on my arm slackened. What is he talking about? I demanded, turning to her. Her face was ash white. I don't know. But her eyes betrayed her. David chuckled low. Lies, lies, lies. She knew before you ever did. That's why I came here. That's why you. The gun shook in my hand. My world tilted on its axis. What the hell did you do, Claire? I whispered. And in that moment of hesitation, David yanked Jacob tighter against him, pressing a knife to my son's throat. Dinner's about to get interesting, he said, his smile wider than ever. Claire screamed, a raw, animal sound that froze me in place. My son's wide eyes locked on mine, pleading silently while David pressed the blade just hard enough to dimple the skin of his throat. Put the gun down, David purred, his voice calm as silk, or Jacob bleeds before dessert. My arms trembled. The weight of the gun had never felt heavier. I forced myself to lower it slightly, though every muscle screamed to fire. Good, he said, eyes glinting. Now, why don't we all sit down like civilized people? He guided Jacob to the head of the table, pulling out a chair like this was some twisted family gathering. He duct-taped Jacob's wrists to the armrests, humming as if he were setting a child up for cake and candles. Stop this, Claire begged. Please just take me instead. David turned, his smile sharp. Oh, I don't want you. Not really, but you. You've been useful. Her knees buckled. She gripped the edge of the table. I don't know what you're talking about, but I could see the cracks in her face, the way her lips trembled. What did you do, Claire? My voice came out hoarse, like I was speaking through broken glass. David chuckled, pulling out his own chair and sitting opposite us. Oh, she hasn't told you. That's disappointing. I was hoping to watch your little marriage crumble over the roast beef. I snapped the gun back up. Tell me now, or I swear to God. Shoot me, and your boy drowns, David interrupted smoothly. He reached into his pocket and tossed something onto the table. A phone. It was already streaming a video. My stomach dropped. The screen showed a dark space, water dripping somewhere off camera. A small crate sat at the center, Jacob's baseball cap perched on top. Live feed, David said casually. That room's on a timer. You've got, 45 minutes before it fills completely. Unless I stop it. Claire gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Why us? I demanded. My voice cracked, half rage, half desperation. Why my son? David leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes burning into mine. Because of her. He pointed at Claire. Silence slammed into the room. My chest rose and fell like I'd run miles. Claire's face had gone pale, sweat glistening on her forehead. Claire, I said slowly, my throat closing. What's he talking about? She shook her head violently. I don't know, I swear. Liar, David hissed, slamming his fist on the table. The plates rattled, wine sloshed over crystal rims. He was losing his calm mask, his smile twisting into something darker. You knew me before I moved here, he spat. You thought I wouldn't find you, but I did. And now, your husband and your precious boy get to pay for your lies. Claire's breath came in short, panicked bursts. No, I thought you were. She broke off, choking on her words. I turned to her, my hands shaking so badly the gun wavered. What did you do? Her eyes filled with tears, that she wouldn't meet mine. And in that split second of hesitation, David stood, knife flashing, dragging it across Jacob's cheek just deep enough to draw blood. Jacob screamed against the tape, thrashing in the chair. Stop, I roared, my finger tightening on the trigger. David grinned, blood shining on the blade. Oh, we're only getting started. Jacob's muffled screams tore through me. My vision tunneled until all I saw was the thin line of blood running down his cheek. Enough, I roared, the gun shaking in my grip. David only smiled wider, the knife gleaming as he held it inches from Jacob's throat. You want this to end? Then it's story time. Claire owes you the truth. My wife's face crumpled. She shook her head, tears dripping onto the table. Please don't make me. Tell him. David barked, his calm mask cracking into raw fury. Tell him why I chose your family. I turned on her, my voice low and breaking. Claire, whatever this is, say it. Her lips trembled. Her eyes darted to Jacob, then to me. Finally, she whispered, I knew him. Before you. Before us. My stomach lurched. What? She swallowed hard, choking on every word. Years ago, I worked at the shelter. He came in sometimes. Not as himself. Different name. Different story. He was unhinged. Obsessed with one of the families there. I caught him following them once. I reported it. David chuckled darkly. You didn't just report me. You ruined me. Had me banned. Labeled. Watched. You painted me as a predator when I was just curious. Curious, I spat. You're stalking children. His eyes snapped to mine, blazing. Don't you dare judge me. You think you're better. You don't even know what your wife's capable of. Claire sobbed, clutching the edge of the table. I thought it was over. I thought he disappeared. I never knew he'd find us. My pulse thundered in my ears. Rage, betrayal, fear, every emotion collided until I could barely breathe. And you didn't tell me. I didn't want to lose you, she cried. I didn't want you to think I'd brought this into our home. The room spun. My grip on the gun faltered. David leaned closer to Jacob, whispering against his ear while glaring at me. See how fast your family crumbles. How little it takes. I snapped. I aimed and fired. The shot cracked through the house, deafening. Claire screamed. The bullet slammed into the wall inches from David's head, plaster raining down. He didn't flinch. He just laughed. A sharp, manic sound that made my blood run cold. You missed, he said, almost gleeful. And now, he pressed the knife harder to Jacob's throat, just enough to draw another bead of blood. My son whimpered, his body shaking against the restraints. Claire collapsed to her knees. Please, please, I'll do anything. David's smile returned, calm and controlled once more. Then prove it. Sit down, eat with me, like a family, or your boy dies here, tonight. He gestured to the plates, the flickering candles, the roast cooling in the center of the table. And in that moment I realized the horror of his game. This wasn't about ransom. It wasn't about escape. Claire's hands shook as she slid into the chair beside me. Her face was pale, streaked with tears, but she obeyed. I sat too, my gun heavy in my lap, hidden beneath the tablecloth. David stood at the head, Jacob bound beside him like some grotesque centerpiece. Good, David murmured, slicing the roast with steady precision. The knife that had drawn my son's blood now carved meat, the smell of garlic and herbs sickening in the tense silence. Families eat together. That's how trust is built. Claire's lips trembled. Please, just let him go. He's a child. He's the glue, David interrupted smoothly. Children hold families together. Without them, people drift. They lie. They betray each other. His eyes flicked to Claire. Isn't that right? I clenched my jaw, refusing to rise to his bait. My finger twitched near the trigger under the table. David served us, placing meat and potatoes on our plates with eerie politeness. Eat, he said softly, or Jacob pays the price. Claire's fork rattled against the porcelain. She forced a bite into her mouth, gagging as she swallowed. I couldn't bring myself to touch mine. David noticed. His smile sharpened. You think I won't do it? He pressed the blade to Jacob's neck again, just enough to make him whimper. I lifted a forkful of food with shaking hands and shoved it into my mouth. Grease coated my tongue, bile rising instantly. But I swallowed. David clapped once, delighted. See? Not so hard. He chewed slowly, savoring every second, watching us squirm. Do you know why I chose this house? This family? I forced my voice steady. Because of Claire. His grin widened. Exactly. She took something from me years ago. Respect. A future. She exposed me. And the world believed her. Do you know what that does to a man? To have everyone see you as a monster. You are a monster, I spat. His eyes darkened. He slammed his knife into the table, the blade quivering inches from Jacob's bound hand. My son flinched so hard the chair scraped the floor. No, Claire screamed, her body lurching forward. David leaned in close to Jacob, whispering, Do you know what happens when parents lie? Little one, kids get hurt. Maybe it's better if you stay with me. I'd never lie to you. Jacob's muffled sobs nearly broke me. Please, I begged, my pride gone. Take me instead. Just let him go. David tilted his head, considering. Then he smiled that awful calm smile. Oh, I will take you, both of you. But first confession. He turned to Claire. Tell him everything. Tell him what you did, or your son doesn't see sunrise. Claire's face drained of blood. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Her eyes darted to me, wide with terror. Claire, I said, my voice low, shaking. What did you do? David pressed the knife harder to Jacob's throat, a thin red line forming. Now, her whole body shook. She finally spoke, barely a whisper. I knew he'd come back one day. I just never told you. My heart stopped. David chuckled darkly. Oh, she's only scratching the surface. Would you like me to finish the story for her? And then, in one smooth motion, he ripped the tape from Jacob's mouth. My son gasped, sobbing, his voice hoarse. Daddy, he cried. He says you're not going to save me. I raised the gun, finger tightening on the trigger, the world narrowing to the monster in front of me. David only smiled wider. My hand shook so badly I thought the gun might slip. Jacob's tear-streaked face blurred behind it. I could hear his breathing, shallow and ragged, each gasp a knife in my chest. David's voice cut through the silence, steady as ever. Go on, Claire. He deserves to know the whole truth before the end. Claire's body seemed to fold in on itself. She clutched the edge of the table, knuckles white. I didn't just report him, she whispered, voice breaking. I lied. I said he touched the child. He hadn't, not then. The room spun. My mouth went dry. You, what? Tears poured down her cheeks. He was following families, watching them, I was terrified of what he might do. No one would listen unless I made it worse. So I lied. I thought I was protecting them. David laughed, sharp and bitter, and she became the hero. Brave Claire, saving children from the big bad wolf. Except the wolf wasn't guilty. Not yet. My stomach churned. I couldn't look at her. My wife, the woman I trusted with everything, had planted the seed that created this nightmare. David's eyes gleamed. See, neighbor? She made me. She birthed the monster you see today. And now you both get to raise him together. Claire collapsed into sobs. I never thought he'd find us. I never thought. Jacob whimpered, tugging against the tape binding his wrists. Mommy, please, he whispered, his voice broken. I aimed the gun square at David's head. This ends now. He smirked. You won't risk it. Not with your boy this close. Besides, he gestured to the phone streaming video of the water slowly rising around the crate. Even if you kill me, you lose him. I felt trapped in a nightmare with no way out. My son's life dangled on a blade. My wife's betrayal poisoned the air. And the man across the table was pulling every string. David leaned back, calm again, as if this was all entertainment. So here's the game. Choose. Do you save the boy in the chair, or the boy in the water? You can't have both. Claire's scream tore through the room. Nitrogen monoxide. My hands shook, sweat dripping into my eyes. You're lying, I said, though my voice cracked. David's smile widened. Am I? Tick-tock. On the phone screen, the water lapped higher against the crate. I could almost hear it echoing in my skull. Jacob sobbed harder, his whole body shaking. Daddy, help me. The gun felt like it weighed 100 pounds. My finger hovered on the trigger, torn between rage and terror. And then glass shattered. The living room window exploded inward, shards spraying across the table. A flash of movement, shouts, heavy boots thundering inside. Police, drop the weapon. Red and blue lights strobed across the walls. Armed officers swarmed the room, guns aimed at David. For the first time, his smile faltered. He pressed the knife harder to Jacob's throat, eyes darting wildly. One step closer and he dies. The laser sights held steady on his chest. Drop it now. One officer barked. Time froze. My son's life teetered on the edge of that blade. My wife's sobs choked the air. My finger twitched on the trigger, seconds from making the choice myself. And then David whispered, so quietly I almost didn't hear it. This isn't over. The room vibrated with tension. Officers formed a half circle. Guns locked on David. The shattered window left a chill crawling across my skin, but sweat poured down my back. David's knife pressed harder against Jacob's throat, a bead of blood sliding down onto the boy's shirt. My son whimpered, his body trembling. Drop it. The lead officer barked again. David's smile twitched back into place. Do you really think bullets are faster than this? He pressed the blade tighter and Jacob cried out. Claire was on her knees, hands clasped together like prayer. Please, please, don't hurt him. I couldn't breathe. Every nerve screamed at me to shoot, but my hands shook too violently. If I missed, Jacob was gone. The officers inched forward. David's gaze flicked between them, his control slipping. Back off, he shouted, spittle flying from his lips. He's mine. You can't take him from me again. That was the crack. His calm mask splintered, rage spilling through. The lead officer seized it. Now! A thunderclap of gunfire erupted. David jerked violently as bullets tore into his chest. The knife clattered to the floor, his body collapsing against the table before sliding to the ground. Jacob screamed as officers rushed forward, cutting the tape from his wrists, pulling him free. I dropped the gun and fell to my knees, wrapping him in my arms so tightly I thought I'd crush him. He sobbed into my chest, his small fists gripping my shirt. It's okay, I whispered, though I wasn't sure if I believed it. Claire crawled to us, wrapping her arms around both of us, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. For a moment, we were just a broken family clinging to each other in the wreckage. But then, sir, one officer called. He was holding up David's phone. The live stream was still running. The crate in the dark room now nearly submerged, water up to the rim. My heart seized. Where is it? I shouted. The officer shook his head. We're tracing the signal, but find it. I roared. But before he could answer, another officer shouted from the hallway. Basement. There's another door. I bolted, nearly slipping on the polished floor as I tore through the house. The basement door was half hidden behind a shelf, padlocked. Officers smashed it open, and we barreled down the stairs. The smell hit first. Damp concrete, mold, and then the crate. It sat in the corner, water gushing from a broken pipe, swirling around it. My stomach dropped as I realized what I was seeing. The lid was nailed shut. We ripped it open with crowbars, my hands raw and bleeding from the effort. Inside, empty. Just the baseball cap, floating in inches of rising water. No, Claire whispered, collapsing against the wall. It was a bluff, an officer muttered. A sick game, but my gut told me it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Upstairs. Paramedics confirmed David was gone, dead. A sheet covered his body as neighbors gathered behind the flashing lights. Whispering, gawking, I held Jacob tighter, refusing to let him go. But in the back of my mind, David's last words echoed like poison. This isn't over. And when the officers checked his phone again, their faces went pale. The live stream was still running, but the camera had moved. Someone else was holding it. The blood drained from my face as I stared at the screen. The video jolted and swayed, as though carried in someone's hand. The lens shifted, revealing a dark hallway lined with peeling wallpaper, a single flickering bulb overhead. "This can't be live," I muttered, but the officer shook his head. "It's real. The metadata confirms it's streaming right now." Claire clutched Jacob so tight he whimpered. "But he's dead," she whispered, eyes darting toward the covered body on the floor above us. "He's dead." I couldn't tear my eyes from the phone. The camera turned, and a shadow crossed the wall. A figure, not David, shorter, thinner, moving with strange, deliberate calm. Then a voice. A woman's. "You did well, brother." My stomach turned to ice. Claire staggered back, her hand over her mouth. "No. Oh God, no." I spun on her, rage boiling. "What the hell do you know?" Her whole body shook. She could barely force the words out. He told me he had a sister, years ago, at the shelter. She never came inside, but she was always waiting for him, watching. I didn't think. The officer cut her off, pointing to the screen. "Look." The camera dipped down. Another crate. Not empty this time. Something shifted inside it, faint banging echoing through the speaker. A muffled cry. My heart nearly stopped. "Is that—" I couldn't finish. Claire clutched my arm, sobbing. "It's another child." On the video, the woman's hand appeared, stroking the crate like it was something precious. Her voice, soft and chilling, whispered into the microphone. "Your son was supposed to join us, but since you ruined our family dinner, we'll just have to settle for someone else's." Jacob buried his face in my chest, whimpering. My hand trembled against his back, bile rising in my throat. "Where is she?" I demanded. "Where the hell is she streaming from?" The officers exchanged looks, tense and pale. "We're working on it," one said. "It could take time." "Time?" I roared, my voice breaking. "There's a child in there. We don't have time." Claire dropped to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. "I should have told you. I should have warned you from the beginning." I wanted to scream at her, to tear the truth from her, but Jacob's small arms wrapped around my neck stopped me. His voice was tiny, broken. "Daddy, will she come for me too?" I held him tighter, my chest shattering. "Not while I'm breathing." The live stream continued, the camera pulling closer to the crate, the muffled cries growing louder. Then the woman's face finally filled the frame, and I knew instantly. The same eyes as David, the same twisted smile, but colder, sharper, hungrier. She leaned close to the lens, her whisper crawling through the speakers and into my bones. "Your neighbor was only the beginning." The screen went black. The silence after the screen went black was worse than any scream. The officers muttered into radios, trying to trace the signal, but I could see it in their faces. Nothing immediate, nothing certain. Claire was on the floor, shaking so hard I thought her bones might break. Jacob clung to me like he was afraid I'd vanish if he let go. I couldn't stay still. My body moved on instinct. I stormed toward David's corpse, yanking the sheet back. His face was slack, eyes half open, the smile gone at last. But I didn't feel relief, only rage. "Where is she?" I hissed, though I knew he couldn't answer. My fist slammed into his chest anyway, a useless act against cold flesh. The lead officer pulled me back. "Sir, I know this is hard, but—" "Hard," I snarled. "My son was nearly carved open at my own dinner table, and now there's a second one out there because of him." Jacob sobbed into my shirt. "Daddy, stop please." His voice was small, broken. And just like that, my anger cracked into ash. I dropped to my knees, holding him, feeling his tiny heart racing against mine. The officers finally herded us back across the street, into our shattered home. Neighbors whispered from porches, their eyes wide with a mixture of pity and suspicion. David had poisoned even that. Inside, Claire sat curled in the corner, rocking back and forth. Her voice was hoarse, words spilling in fragments. I thought lying would stop him. I thought it would keep other kids safe. I didn't think he'd. I didn't know about her. I couldn't even look at her. Every time I tried, bile rose in my throat. Hours blurred into dawn. The flashing lights faded. The officers gone. Only silence left behind. Jacob finally fell into a restless sleep on the couch, his small body twitching with nightmares. I stood at the window, staring at David's house. Empty again. A hollow shell of horror. But I knew the real threat wasn't gone. She was still out there, watching, waiting. My phone buzzed. A new message from the same unknown number. My stomach flipped as I opened it. One photo, taken from our front yard, through the glass. It showed me, standing at the window, staring out, and in the reflection behind me, faint but undeniable, a woman's silhouette. I spun, gun raised, heart exploding in my chest. Nothing, just the dim living room, the couch where Jacob slept, the empty hallway. But I knew, she'd been here, maybe still was. I stood there trembling, sweat dripping down my back, and realized something that made my blood run colder than any threat, colder than David's knife or his smile. This wasn't about neighbors anymore. This was about survival, and survival changes everyone.